All right, all right, all right. We are live. I know we don't have anyone joining us yet, but I'm gonna kind of get it started. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. I know that don't sound right. But regardless, it's a new week, it's a new day, it's a new week. We're gonna get it into it. Happy Monday, everyone. Did y'all miss me? Because I wasn't on last week. Did y'all miss me? Because I missed y'all too. But we are back here another, again, another Monday, another week. But we're gonna kind of switch it up a little bit. So I know we always talk about local government, what the city city people are doing, and then what the county folks are doing. But like I said, we're gonna do something a little bit different this week, and talk about state level stuff, because obviously that impacts our communities as well. So I'm really super excited about this show, because, yeah, we have a special guest joining us to discuss, again, when we're talking about state level policies, specifically looking at improving healthy food accessibility, looking at improving the overall well being of Missourians. So I'm super excited, and please, y'all, show some love virtually, or if you want to clap, as you're listening to this, you can. Please show some love for our special guest, Miss Madison. How you doing?
Hi, Kelly. I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you?
I am well. I don't like Mondays, but I look forward to Mondays having conversations with folks like you. So thank you for joining us this evening. So please, first, before we get into it, feel free to introduce yourselves. Let the people know out there on the internet who you are.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me on. My name is Madison Eacret. I use she, her pronouns. I am the public policy and advocacy coordinator at Operation Food Search. And I've been there for about 2 years now. And Operation Food Search, if you haven't heard of it before, is located in the Overland area of St. Louis County. But it's a nonprofit organization that works on food insecurity, and addressing it through a variety of ways. One, by meeting the immediate need, and that's what the organization has done historically, is work on getting food to people. And at this point, they serve about 200,000 people throughout 27 counties in Missouri and Illinois, through a network of agency partners. And yeah, so there's a huge impact when it comes to getting food to people, but they also are trying to work beyond just immediate hunger relief and build nutrition IQ. So they have a community nutrition team that hosts classes and demonstrations and provides information and resources to build a solid foundation of nutrition education. And then they've also got some innovative programs like Metro Market, the St. Louis Metro Market, if you've heard of it. Quentin Ward does an awesome job putting that together every year. It recently was acquired by Operation Food Search and has been doing great things. It's basically a farmer's market on wheels that goes to neighborhoods around the St. Louis city and county area that are essentially food deserts, is kind of what the term has been, but food apartheid and food swamps are some of the more common terms that are used now, that talk about how, it's a food swamp refers to the fact that there's maybe food options available, but they're not really great healthy food options. It's more of that fast food and corner stores, which don't that
Mhm.
don't always offer like fresh produce. So that's the Metro Market and the program side, but I'm on the policy and advocacy team. So we work on state level policy primarily, having to do with food security issues, but also going beyond that, because we know that food insecurity doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a lot of other things that it intersects with, when it comes to poverty and inequalities, systematic racism, and a whole host of other factors that influence people's access to food, and also, the other things that are going on in their lives. So right now, we are working on policies that prioritize advancing economic security for folks, increasing access to free and nourishing school meals, and making it easier for families to connect to the existing federal food and safety net programs like WIC and SNAP, and especially for historically underserved and marginalized populations. So we do that, and then also work on enhancing some of the food security research, especially when it comes to what's available on a state level. So there's always a lot of information at a national level, but decision makers like it to be, more local. So we want to get a pulse on what's going on across our state. So that's kind of some of the areas that our team has been working on, and then the organization more broadly. So there's a lot of things always happening with
Yes.
Operation Food Search. So I know that's pretty a long introduction, but there's a lot happening. So
Yes, but I appreciate you sharing that, Madison. I know a lot of folks are familiar with some of Operation Food Searches, again, addressing the immediate need, working with schools, churches,
mhm.
libraries, and other organizations to provide food for folks that need it the most. And also, the nutrition education component. I know I've interacted and done some work coordinating those efforts throughout the community. But I think like people do not know that y'all be advocating
Yeah.
and for policies, especially at our state level. So that's why I'm like super and uber excited that you were able to hop on here just so people were aware, like
Yeah.
y'all be out here.
Yeah.
Um,
Our policy team is about 5 years old now. So it's definitely like out of a 40-year organization on the new end of things. But we've started to build a solid foundation and have been growing our, level of expertise and presence in the state legislature, and then also with coalitions and other community partners too. So it's definitely a process to like build up a policy and advocacy team and presence and everything. But we're definitely trying to get out there and keep an eye on folks and all the bills going through.
I know. And so, okay, specifically, Madison, you may have mentioned this, but what is your role? What is your role with Operation Food Search?
Yeah, my role is the policy and advocacy coordinator. It was a public policy coordinator, and we kind of like broadened it out because I'm working on a research project right now, which is called the WIC Innovation Project. And so that was a grant funded through the Missouri Foundation for Health to gather feedback and to basically understand what is working and what were some of the barriers to utilizing WIC in Missouri. It's one of the programs that has a long, history of showing positive outcomes when it's used, but it's also something that there's a lot of barriers to getting enrolled and utilizing the program for folks. So we're working with the state. They've been really great with being open to listening to what we've heard from folks, and also trying to work with us and other community partners to advance some changes. So that's been something that's one of my top priorities in my role, is to work on that WIC Innovation Project. And you can check it out on our website, wic.operationfoodsearch.org. A little plug there. If you're interested in looking at our phase 1 report, and there's key highlights there too that talk about what the barriers are that we heard from folks across the state during this last year. And then I also, under that role, I also work on the state level advocacy and working in coalitions with some of our other food security advocates too. Is mostly, there's a long off season for the state legislature, and that's where a lot of the work ends up getting done in building some some coalition around good bills and setting priorities and all of that good stuff. So yeah, there's definitely
Ooh,
there's a
yeah.
few things going on.
A few, just a couple.
A couple.
So, and we're gonna switch gears a little bit. So, again, thank you for providing that rundown of what Operation Food Search does and a lot of the great work that you are doing part of that organization. But we're gonna, switch gears because we about to get into Jefferson City.
Mhm.
Shout out to Jefferson City. Yeah, yeah. Our legislators. Yeah, look at that. So, for people that are not aware, and then we're going to get to some of the policies, the priorities of Operation Food Search, and some of the things that you all are really advocating for. But for folks that are not aware, right? Like, how long is the session for our
Yeah.
state legislators? Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So right now we're actually just at the halfway point, or what's kind of termed as the halfway point. The session goes from the beginning of January, I think it was maybe the 6th or something this year, and it ends May 12th. So we've got about, I think somebody said 6 more weeks today. I didn't even count it out, but it is going to be a quick, mad dash to the end once folks come back from break. But it, yeah, is a process. I can give a little bit of an overview if that's helpful.
Please. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Please.
So typically towards the beginning and even before the session starts, legislators can pre-file their bills, and so you can file a bill in either chamber, which is the House or the Senate. And this is all under the legislative branch of government. So there's three government branches: the legislative, judicial, and executive. And on a state level, the executive is the governor. So the bills get passed within the legislative branch, where the House and the Senate are, where you have your senators and your representatives. And bills can get introduced in either house or either chamber, and then they work their way through. So once they're introduced, the majority party has pretty strong control of what happens. So that's why that's pretty important when it comes to the makeup of what goes through our legislature, because they get to set who is on what committees, and then they also get to decide what bills get referred to what committee and when. So,
Yeah. And that is important out there for people to understand.
mhm,
They set the tone. They set the
mhm,
tone for the whole session, essentially. And I was speaking to my state rep, shout out to her, Kimberly Ann Collins,
nice.
because she was excited last session. She was able to get, I think, one of her bills. It was actually her in a committee. And so that can be extremely challenging, especially when you have a super majority right now, Republican control like legislator. She's a Democrat. So she
Mhm.
was so hyped. She's like, Kelly, I got my bill. It's in committee and we're gonna discuss it. So I just want people to know, just because the bill is introduced does not necessarily mean that it will come before the committee to continue to move through
Yeah.
the
And
session.
even a lot of times it ends up dying in the committee. So even if it gets heard in the committee, it doesn't mean that it gets pushed out. So once it gets referred to a committee, then the committee chair is the one who gets to decide what bills get a hearing. So when there's a hearing, that's the public's opportunity to provide feedback. So they get to decide what bills people get to, voice their opinions on. And so there's a lot of power within
Right.
those committee chairs. And also, at what point within the session do these bills get a hearing too? So
Mm,
they
mm,
do have a lot of power when it comes to what gets moved. And that's kind of where some of the politicking and relationship building and having those conversations with people and educating them on why, this bill is particularly important, or, get a lot of if you can get a lot of emails to a certain senator's office or something, like it might flag to them that there's an additional level of interest, that people are watching for this. And there's ways to influence those decision-making points, even if it's not a chance to give a public testimony. Some of that advocacy of sending emails and calling your senators or your representatives and telling them, hey, this is a really important bill to me. I really would, it's important that we get this heard. And so, and you can target folks who, you can look up the committees online and target those committee chairs and committee members and sit and say, hey, this is important to me.
Woo. So, okay, I know we're still on the process really quickly. So, okay, let's say the bill is heard. We got the public hearing. It passes out of the committee. So then what happens?
Yeah, so then it passes out of the committee, and then it gets the chance to get heard on the floor. So it can also move from one committee to another. It doesn't always get moved from one committee straight to getting a floor hearing. So there's a chance that it can go through multiple committees. And then once it passes out of committees, then it goes on to the majority party gets to control the calendar for the floor. So if there's a formal calendar and there's an informal calendar. So it's kind of like the bullpen of what they're interested in, but they might not have the votes at the moment, but here's what's on the docket, kind of a thing. So you can look at what is listed on those calendars. Sometimes, especially as we get closer towards the end of the session, the ones that are on the imperfect or the informal calendar are likely maybe not going to get heard on the floor. So the ones that are on the formal calendar, those are really your top items, and those are what they're going to go through and hear, back to back, but they are subject to change order. So once they get heard, then during the floor hearings, that's when senators or whatever house they're in, they can have amendments get added. So this is another tricky point where amendments, can be really great, and you can add an amendment that can really advance a bill, or you can add maybe another bill that would have been a separate one on its own and amend it to this and try to get it passed through. But there's also, ways to put bad amendments on that are just there to effectively stop the bill from moving, which we've seen happen, quite a bit, which is really particularly frustrating when you do all of that work to get it that far. And then especially there can be like a pretty good consensus on, this is a decent bill that everybody agrees on. And can be extreme people that get enough votes to get the amendment added and it kills it, which is a very frustrating part of the process. But it's they can do that too.
Yeah, and real quick, one of a former state rep I spoke to mentioned how you have your bill sometimes, like once all those amendments get added to the bill, you like, damn, this is a completely different bill.
Yeah, it can really change the meaning of it. And there's a really good example of that in one of our priority bills. The Medicaid coverage extension bill was just passed in the Senate, and it had an amendment that was put on it that is really going to jeopardize that impact that bill would have. So yeah, I can get into that a little bit more. But anyways, it has to pass that. It has to pass whatever chamber that it was introduced to, and then it has to go through that whole process on the other side. And once it makes it through, and you can have a bill introduced in both the House and Senate. That's a really common thing, to have a companion bill where they're the same language. So it kind of speeds up the process. And then once it passes both chambers, so the House and the Senate, then they have to make sure that the same language is passed within both. So then they'll have to it gets sent to this thing, what's called a conference committee, which is what, there's a few representatives and a few senators that are relevant to the bill, and they come together and they try to pass something that they can agree on. So there's always a lot of work that gets done in those conference committees. So then at that point, it's not quite done. It's not quite law. They send it over. It gets passed. It's finally truly agreed upon and finally passed is what the term is. And then that gets sent to the governor. The governor can sign it and put it into law. If the governor does not sign it into law, the legislature can veto his decision by 2/3 vote. So there's also those checks and balances. But it is important to follow it all the way through to the governor's signature, because he can veto it, but he can also do something which is like not signing it, which is kind of a political move to where it's saying that, I don't really necessarily condone this, but I'm going to let it pass into law anyways. So there's a
Wow.
lot of process involved. So I can understand, like, it can get complicated.
Woo. That was wow.
Yeah.
But thank you for
And
sharing that information. Because we need to know that. We need to know that. It's a lot of twists and turns, and you never know what can happen with the process, y'all. So very interesting. So we're gonna get into this now. So I asked you, and shout out to Madison. Clutch came in with this beautiful PowerPoint presentation, which I appreciate,
I like the visual.
to make it simple, and so we can follow it. And people can also refer back to it. So I am going to share my screen because we are getting into y'all some specific policy priorities of Operation Food Surge, and we're going to talk through like really what are some of these bills, what do they mean, and how to keep track of them and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, Madison, let's get into it. So please feel free to share. Let us know what are y'all's priorities.
Yeah, let's get into it. So this is kind of an overview. There's a lot more bills that we're watching, but I'd say these are some of our priority bills that we're in support of. One of the top line items we know, even of the whole legislature, this is a bipartisan effort, is the postpartum Medicaid coverage extension from 60 days to 12 months. We'll talk more about all of these later. So just highlighting, a few of the main ones. And I'll go ahead to the next one and I'll jump in. Yeah, so this is SB 45. Now, there's a few different bills that are introduced this year that are all talking about Medicaid postpartum coverage. So
real quick, I want people to know SB, this is a Senate bill.
Senate bill, yes. Yes. Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, Senate Bill 45, and there was another bill that was introduced that it got combined because there was a lot that had pretty similar language and were going for the same thing. So this was Senator Elaine Gannon from DeSoto. She's a Republican and has introduced this bill for several years and has really been a champion for it too. So very happy to see this move through. Now, this is an example of a amendment that was added kind of as a poison pill at the end of the process. So we did all this, there's so many advocates and people who came together, do a lot of good work and get it passed all the way through the Senate or get to the floor, and then an amendment gets added on that actually is pretty problematic because it jeopardizes the content of the amendment is problematic, but two, even further, it puts the entire proposal at risk of not being approved by the federal agency that it needs to be approved by in order for it to get implemented. So it's really just undermining a lot of the work that had been done, and a wide bipartisan effort to get this passed, and get, so much support for it. So the theme I've been hearing from other advocates this year is fix it in the House. So that means where a lot of times things will get passed through the House and then it goes through the Senate and gets worked, some of those details get worked out because of the nature of the makeup of, some of a larger body in the House versus a smaller body in the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, they're kind of saying it's backwards to where they're getting things passed in the Senate first, and now they're a lot of some of these working out some of the kinks is happening when it goes through the House. And yeah,
Mm.
so just kind of interesting the way that process works. Again, like it passed all the way through one chamber, and now it's got to go to the other, but there's still opportunity for changes to be made. So it's not really like uh don't give up hope yet, basically.
Y'all, like this isn't
Not
like
giving hope.
it.
There's
Okay.
there is a really good chance for this to still go through clean and not have that abortion amendment language on there, which effectively kills the bill. So
Jeez
there's
Louise.
some advocacy to do in the House. And I think this is, one of those things that contact your House representative, and especially, yeah, if there's some that have been advocates for it before, or even if they've been, against it, tell them why you think it's important. So this is one to watch as it goes through in these next 6 weeks. And it's been a priority. So there's a lot of coverage about it too.
Wow. Again, y'all, this is not the end all be all.
Right.
So please be aware. Reach out to folks, reach out to your reps, state reps, if you feel, really strongly, whatever way. But there are ways that you can lend your voice to this bill. Um, all right, what's up?
This is
What's
a
up
really
next?
interesting bill, and one we were very excited to see introduced and get so much support this year.
Mhm.
This was one that we worked on some during the off season, prior to this session starting, in a coalition focused on SNAP. And then it kind of evolved as we were working with the Senate sponsor, to be something bigger. So, really exciting because there's a lot of good pieces in this bill. The first would be to create a transitional benefit program for a lot of the safety net benefits. So, currently, most of the benefits have a maximum income level where it's 185% of the federal poverty level, which is determined by your household size, and it increases as you have more people in your house. And right now, that threshold is at 185%, and it's a hard cutoff for most of these programs. I think childcare is the only one right now that has some sort of transitional benefits. So as your income increases above that threshold, that cutoff for maximum benefits, the benefits slowly decrease until the 300% of the federal poverty guidelines. So it gets pushed out, and you, instead of losing all of your benefits just by making a little bit more over that maximum, it actually adjusts with you and will slowly decrease benefits as you're able to increase your income. So
Oh wow.
it's
Okay.
it's really, really good because it's, there's a lot of cases where people would, either need to turn down, or they'd be just overall worse off if they end up taking a small raise or a few more hours at work, because it would be just putting them over that threshold, which would be a considerable loss in the overall financial benefits, and income that the household would get for just a little bit of, advancement at work. And so this would really ease that and be able to, help folks transition from benefits and full coverage of benefits, and be able to take those modest increases without losing them all.
Oh, wow. Because currently, right now, once you hit that threshold, it's a wrap, right? You
Yeah,
get
for most of them, I'm pretty sure childcare has
right.
some type of transitional benefit.
Mhm,
I don't think it's quite to this extent, so it
mhm,
would be up into that 300% of the federal poverty guideline. But there was an amendment that was added that caps the income at $70,000. So that is like, if you're a single working parent and you've got maybe 3 or 4 kids
mhm.
and you're making $70,000, that may exceed that 300% of that income threshold. So you wouldn't quite get all the way to 300%, but this is a really big step in the right direction, and a really big, I think there's quite a few people that will benefit from this.
Oh, yeah. And also I see on here simplified benefits application form. Thank you. I mean,
That
because
is huge. That is so
because I've
huge.
heard a lot of stories about just being able to like apply the process to obtain these benefits are, they're real, for
Yeah.
folks that really need to utilize these benefits. So yes to that, I'll
That
say.
is a huge thing. They're hoping, I think they're aiming for like a 1 to 2 page application, which would be so considerable, like such a big change. I know they, even during the testimony, because I went to testify for this bill in Jeff City, the senator who proposed it, Mary Elizabeth Coleman, she talked about, her family receives public benefits and how difficult it was for her during her application, and it being, a personal experience that she could relate to, and understood that this was, not an effective way to go about getting people the benefits and the food and resources that they absolutely need. So
Yeah, definitely.
I am really happy to see that this is a priority for not only her, but it seems like there's quite a bit of support across the board on this bill. And another really important piece is
Mhm.
um, the lifetime ban that is currently on folks who have um, a previous felony drug conviction on their records. So time can be served, probation's no longer, and they still are banned from SNAP
You
for
said
their
you said currently it's a lifetime ban?
lifetime ban. For that individual, not their family, I will say, but it is still an essential part of being able to reenter society, and even just that's so important to have access to food, and you should not be punished for a lifetime for a sentence already served,
Facts,
especially. So
facts.
there's a lot, I mean, there's so many reasons why it makes sense for folks to have access to these benefits, especially as they're trying to get on their feet. But this is something that was included. Right now, there's a modified ban. So there's an application process that you can go through, but is effectively useless right now. There's not really anybody that's receiving those waivers of this,
Mhm.
lifetime ban. Even like the application is really difficult to use. And then, like we just said, and then also, I think the office that is listed to turn it in didn't even exist the last time I looked at it. So it is not in a the moderated ban is not really effective. It's not getting people, what they are intended to get, which is SNAP benefits after they've served their felony,
That's
drug conviction. And further, we, know that treating like drug use is more of a public health crisis than anything criminal. So there's a lot of reasons not to punish people for a lifetime. Uh,
yeah, if they've
so
served well, I'm gonna get off my
yeah,
soapbox about
I
that.
I know this is one I could really go on for, but
But this is great. So
yeah,
this is good. This is good.
very good. This is one. There's really good support. There's two companion bills that are going through the what SB 82 passed the Senate, so that's a really great
Okay.
start. And then it is moving through the House, so it is really on track for passing this year, if all goes according to plan. Like this is a really good one to watch.
All right. Senate
Yes.
Bill 313.
Okay, so this is another one that was brought back from last year by Senator Angela Mosley. This is another really good bill. Last year it had quite a bit of bipartisan support and was on the floor of the House and got a poison pill amendment added to it too. So it was one that was like a disappointing blow with an amendment from a pretty extreme person. But it is really coming back around and having more support and moving through the Senate pretty well right now. So there was a hearing conducted in the Senate Progress and Development Committee, and it was supposed to have an executive hearing where they get to decide, they say whether it passed out of that committee or not. That was scheduled for just before this break, but it had to get rescheduled due to something. So it's don't fear, this one can still get moved, but it's got a really good start and some good momentum. Now we need it to get pushed through and through the Senate, and then we got to get to work on the House side too. So yeah, this is one too, specifically, like it has a targeted population. It doesn't, a lot of legislators are concerned by expanding SNAP. This doesn't expand SNAP. This just makes it so those who can't, use cooking facilities because they're elderly, disabled, or unhoused, or they don't have access to preparing the food safely or in a facility, that they can use their SNAP benefits to purchase hot prepared meals at authorized retailers, whether that's a grocery store who has, a rotisserie chicken,
Mhm.
or a certain a restaurant that has certain approved meals. And so there is some regulation around it that will have to happen during the implementation, but it's really needed for folks who have these benefits and need to be able to use them.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, well, elderly, oh, our seasoned folks,
Mhm.
and even the unhoused population. I think a lot of folks don't even think about, you know, even if they do have these benefits, like how are they gonna cook? Like how are they gonna prepare these meals? Right?
Right.
They don't have the means to do that. So just really being considerate of, like you said, these specific populations. So
Mhm.
that's and Senator Mosley, she's in North County. So
Yeah, that's right. So that's another one. If you want to send her an email to say thank you for advocating for this really great policy, then that's another action you can take.
all right, what is up with these universal free school meals,
There's
man?
a
This
Yeah,
is a lot. This is a
this
lot
is
here on the slide. So
it
you need to tell
is.
us what's going on. And what are universal free school meals?
Yes. So let's see where to even start. Universal free school meals, they would provide a free breakfast or lunch to any student who would like it. So it doesn't require a student to apply. And it really, there's a lot of research that shows that universal free school meals decreases stigma, it improves the academic outcomes and achievement for all students, and improves like the health and well-being of all students too, because when there's not as much stigma to getting a school meal, there's a lot more students who are eating it. So it, one, not only helps the students get fed, get the food they need for schools, but it also helps the schools too in reducing their administrative burden, and also to be able to purchase in larger quantities and be able to just kind of operate on a larger scale, which oftentimes helps particularly smaller schools who are, operating kitchens. So there's a lot of benefits to the school, to the students, families, a lot of folks. So there's a big impact with these bills. And we were really excited to see them introduced this year. It was a little bit of a surprise that they were introduced and have gotten some movement too. They there's a variety between these three bills. I would say the HB 172 by Brian Seitz, that one it is pretty vague. It just, says that all schools will provide all students, a breakfast and a lunch every day. So there's a lot of room. That some would say this is almost like a marker bill. So that is kind of to get the conversation going and to flesh out what this would look like through the process as it moves from the committee to the floor. So there would be more work to be done on this bill, definitely, if it gets a hearing. So there is some structure that, would need to be worked out, but it's really great to get the conversation going. And one, to acknowledge, we know coming out of the pandemic how important school meals were for students, and seeing that schools are where students are getting their meals. So really seeing that this is a priority and acknowledging that connection and the importance of school meals is something that, is really an important piece for us, even if these bills don't go anywhere this or any further this session. So I would say this is a really good start. I don't know if they'll actually pass all the way through the legislature, especially considering the fiscal note that comes with universal school meals. But there is a report that Operation Food Search just finished with WashU, their Social Policy Institute at Washington University in St. Louis. It's on reduced price meals and covering the cost of reduced price, basically covering that copay, having the state cover the copay for families. So collapsing that reduced price meal. So all of this, everybody who would qualify for reduced would receive free meals. So it's a little bit more targeted, since the cutoff for free meals is at 130% of that federal poverty guideline. And the reduced price cutoff is 185% of the federal poverty guideline. So it would be covering that 130 to 185 chunk and covering the copay, which the reports that they produced said that there is an impact on what the cost is, even if it's a 30-cent copay per meal. That still will reduce kids' usage of school meals, even when there is a small copay with each one. So there's a lot of information backing providing increased free school meals to kids. And we'd love to see something pass. If it has to be a more targeted approach, I think that's something that we'd absolutely support if we can get a targeted approach passed. But the ultimate goal is for us free universal school meals. I just, at this point with the fiscal note, just knowing the way that this legislature is, I do have a hard time seeing that passing right now because it's so new. But we also know that's pretty typical for some bills too, that it's introduced this year, but we're starting to see progress in other states that have been working on this too. And so some of their stepping stones have been that reduced price category being covered. So there's movement happening in other states. it's really promising to see some movement happening in ours, and I'm hoping that we can maybe get something done, whether that's this session or in a near upcoming one. This is the universal school meals one is kind of a beast. It's a big piece to move, but it's one that we're hoping, whether
Yeah.
it's done on a state level or even the federal government level, that's something they're considering as well. Um,
Yeah, and we got to start somewhere.
yeah, exactly. So we're glad to see the movement here, and it's a good jumping off point.
Yeah, and so I know there are a couple more that I did want you to speak through.
Yeah, we can kind of skim some of the tax credit bills.
Mhm.
It's pretty straightforward. Tax tax credits for grocery
Yeah.
stores in a food desert. That's a good thing.
Mhm.
If
Oh,
anybody's
cool.
interested in talking more about any of these, let me know too.
Yeah.
And this is particularly this one would focus, the one that's moving the most is the one on state sales tax on groceries. There was a lot of feedback that locality, taking away the food tax on localities, would mess too much with their funding sources. So, but we're one of not very many states at this point that still has a sales tax on groceries on a state level. So it would be pretty good to see that move, and there's quite a bit of support for it too. So
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
expect that to pass.
Anything to help because it's real.
Hmm.
And then oh yeah,
So
here's
these are some ones that we would be advocating against, but the good thing this year is that they are not really moving. We just saw, yeah, this one is just about to be second read. This is just saying that they're basically at the level of being introduced. So they're
Mhm.
not to a committee yet, which is really great.
Ah, yeah.
So these were all bills that make it harder to access public benefits in a variety of ways.
So yeah, so y'all see um yeah, especially the work requirements one. It seems like that comes up every session.
Every year there's work requirements ones, and there's already work requirements that are established on SNAP, on public benefits, but they are trying to make it, and there's already penalties if you're not meeting these things. They're
Fact.
just trying to make it even more punitive and up to like lifetime bans again. So it's one of those things, it's not needed. We already have these.
Yeah.
And
Lifetime ban? Come on
yeah,
now.
ridiculous.
Get it together. Okay, so I know those were specific to again supporting healthy food access and just supporting overall like health and well-being for Missourians. But if you could just kind of briefly discuss some of the other bills because I did ask because we know
Mhm.
it's a lot going on.
There's a lot. There's a lot out there. There's a lot besides our food world, which um, I try to, sometimes keep my focus in because there's just so much happening. And yeah, so the ballot initiative petition process, I would
Oh,
say the highlight to look into, and to try to, you know, really try to understand that this is a really important thing that they're trying to pass right now. So
ooh,
it's making it harder to get items on the ballot for folks to vote on. So this is the same process that we use to get Medicaid expanded, and
well,
the same process that was used to legalize marijuana. It's the same process that's used to get a lot of the things that people want to, the majority of folks want to see, because you have to get a certain proportion of um, petition signatures from
mhm.
every region, certain regions of the state, in order for this initiative to get put on the ballot to be voted on a statewide election. Um, Now they're trying to make it harder to do that. So it makes it increasingly more difficult to get some of those items passed. So please pay attention and reach out to your representatives or senators um, if you feel inclined or if they're working on it.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I know it seems like there are like 3 million bills about trans rights, especially in youth sports. And I mean, it seems like it's so many of those bills
I know.
have been introduced this session. I
And
just think
that
it
one,
blows my mind.
yeah, that one's hard for me to be like, why is this even your priority? I don't get it. But
It blows my mind. But we gotta have that going on.
yep,
So heads up, y'all.
yep, pay attention. I mean, it's never good when people are having their health care at jeopardy. So
That's
um,
a lot.
sports betting is looking to get legalized as far as another important thing that's being talked about. And then there's a lot that's happening around early childhood education when it comes to preschools and the child early education, early childhood education tax credits, and some of the way that those systems work. Now, that is not all my expertise, so I'm gonna leave it there. Um, and it gets really, really technical and complicated. I would say Kids Win Missouri is a really great resource for understanding some of those childhood educate or early child care and education bills. They do a weekly breakdown of what's going on in the legislature too. So um, they're a good one to look into.
Yeah. Um, it's a lot.
A
There's a
lot.
lot there. I did want to lift up one thing. This isn't on here. I know this isn't, I don't know. Obviously, I don't work for Operation Food Service, so I can't see their priorities, but I know something we'll be talking about. Is the unfortunate there is legislation moving through the process that would take away local control of the city's police department.
Mhm.
So we'll be talking about that later on, y'all. But
Yeah.
that's something also that we got to deal with. We got to
Hmm.
deal with. So yeah, okay, thank you. So there's no it's not all gloom and doom, right? So there
Right.
are ways for folks, as we always say, ways you can get engaged and involved, even when we're talking about, especially when we're talking about um our state level legislative process. So I know, shout out to Madison. She's like, I don't know if y'all caught what she was saying with each of those bills about ways that you can reach out to your elected official, just to speak your to give your piece about how you feel about it either way. She also mentioned, I know you mentioned like different coalitions and different
Mhm.
groups that are also advocating for certain issues. um and even shoot, she said, aside from contacting your elected official and saying, what the hell are you doing, girl? Thank them. Like, you know what? I saw you introduce this bill and yada yada yada. You know what? Good looking out.
That
It's
can go a long
appreciated.
way. Hmm.
And then the testimony. So can you speak to that, submitting testimony on bills?
Yeah.
That
Yeah. So that is at the point where, if a bill is being heard in a committee, they will send out those committee schedules. So, especially if you're following an advocacy group or there's a particular bill that you want to keep watch on, there's ways to track those. We can talk about more in a minute. And then when it's being heard in a committee, one, if it's in the Senate, they they require physical presence this year in the Senate. So during COVID, there was the luxury of being able to do some of the virtual testimony. But at this point, the Senate does require virtual physical presence. So you go to the Senate room, and you don't even have to have a really elaborate, write up of something that you want to say. You can just talk about what the bill, means to you, why you want to support or oppose it, and give a little information, a little background, either about yourself or why this, how this will impact you, why it's important for your community, and just try to make an appeal to them, persuade them to see it how you do, and give them a little glimpse into how this is really affecting real people's lives. Because I think that's the main point of these testimonies, is to bring it back down to the impact and to demonstrate what this will really do for folks.
And so you mentioned as far as like
And
Senate bills.
yeah, sorry. And then for the House, you can submit a testimony electronically on their website. So if you go to the Missouri House website, you can Google it. And then on their hearings, there should be a button, a place to submit testimony, and you can submit it there. So it's a lot easier. You can, do that from the comfort of your home within the certain time period. I think it may be like a day or so that they have it open ahead of time. Um,
Quick question. Quick
mhm.
question for you. I don't know if you can answer this or not, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask it. Written testimony versus in-person testimony. Do you think that, is one a little bit more, I don't want to say valuable, but that's the word that comes to my mind. Do you think one is more valuable than the other? Do they both hold like equal
I
value, equal
was
weight? Like, what do you think?
Well, I just think about, okay, if I get a letter versus if I hear from my friend, right? If I hear from a friend, I get that emotional, compelling story that can be tend to move people. Those personal accounts are hard to really capture all that well on paper unless you're just like a phenomenal writer. But any testimony is better than no testimony.
Yes.
And getting something in and on the record, sometimes, it may just depend on the legislator too. Maybe they're not really one that gets those same compelling feelings, and they are more of a research person and like those numbers. So
Mhm.
sometimes if you can do a little bit of both, where you're giving a little bit of a story and then following up with maybe a fact or two to support, that's always like a pretty good formula for hitting both of those,
Mhm.
target audiences. But yeah, it's hard to say, but that's kind of how I think of it.
Yeah. And something is better than nothing. So I'm not trying to deter people from sending in a written testimony. And also, let's be clear, like, not everyone has the luxury of traveling to
Oh,
Jefferson
no.
City during a work day, right? So I just, I don't want people to say I'm like crapping on that, but
Yeah.
um, I
No.
just
Not to ignore that as if it's like that accessible for folks, especially living outside of Jefferson City. Like it's not that easy to make it happen unless you're like me and hired for this particular reason. So we understand. So it's also something like, if you're interested in doing a testimony and don't really know where to start or what to do, or you want to submit one but you're not able to go, like, let us know or reach out to Kelly or I or somebody, and we can connect you with, maybe somebody for us could go and submit it. I'm not really sure, but we can try to figure something out to where we get your point across to the people you're trying to tell it to.
yes, and I will, Madison. I'm gonna share like when we finish our conversation. I'll be
Mhm.
sure to share your email,
Great.
and when we do the posting. So if people really are super passionate, but they don't know where to go, where to start, et cetera,
Yeah,
we can definitely reach out
yeah,
to you. You can kind of direct them to where they need to be.
definitely.
Okay. And then, okay, obviously follow you all right on
Yeah.
social
Mhm.
media. Y'all have a newsletter. Y'all have a website.
Yeah. Operationfoodsearch.org. Pretty easy. You can check us out on there. There's a tab on about our work, and then we're also revamping our Get Help page to be more of a resource hub. So in the next few months, check back, because we're undergoing some updates on our website to be a little bit more robust around our resources and advocacy materials too.
Oh, and this is very timely. This is very timely. We're going to be having some conversations around this soon, but please, yes,
Yes,
Medicaid. Yes. So please,
Medicaid.
yeah.
So this is like a spread the word PSA moment. There's a lot of folks who may not be aware of Medicaid re-enrollment or um, renewals that will be happening. So They were waived during COVID, but are now being reinstated. So if you came on to Medicaid or Missouri Health Net during COVID, you've probably haven't done this before. So make sure, or if you've moved since then, since the last time you've had to do a renewal, make sure that your contact information is up to date. And then you can also learn more about what to expect in the renewal by going to mydss.mo.gov/renew. And you can um, check their website or go online and make sure your contact info is up to date, and spread the word too, please. This is something that'll be really important because we expect a lot of people to, due to not understand, knowing that this will occur, or not having their contact information being up to date and being alerted that it's happening, they're going to miss these renewal opportunities or the annual renewal, and end up being kicked off of Medicaid coverage. So we're anticipating drops in coverage due to this, and get the word out, make sure that people aren't falling through the gaps here.
Yes, message, PSA, sound on, all of those things. Please spread this word. And we're actually Madison, like we are going to be having some of these conversations. I know definitely next month we're trying to really bring about some awareness. To your point, there's a bunch of people that's about to be getting kicked off. So the more we can be out there so that people are aware and what they have to do, so that they are not, we got to do this again. We have to sound the alarms and at least just make sure people are aware of what's happening.
Yeah. And they begin starting April, but it might not, you might not be at those top of the rolls. So
Mhm.
it may not occur until later in the year. So you gotta, one, don't wait, even though it's just starting in April, and don't bank on being
No.
the person, but also, it just keep your eyes out for that when it happens.
Man,
Mm.
wow.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a big one.
that's a lot, and I do want to thank you so much, Madison, for sharing all this information, but most importantly, thank you for what you do, because that is not easy work. Advocating in Jefferson City. Okay, y'all, Jefferson City.
Advocating anywhere, let's
You
be
know what I'm saying? It's not Disney. It's not Disney World. Okay,
honest.
so but honestly, thank you for the work that you all are doing to support health and well being for all Missourians.
Kelly, thank you. Are you kidding me? You for having me on, for being an advocate for everybody. And you're honestly a huge voice, but also a megaphone back to the people, which is like a really important thing to have somebody who's that two-way communication, to bring it back to folks, because like you said, not everybody has the luxury of being able to pay attention all the time. So that's why, I think, advocates like us play an important role of making that information more accessible with platforms like this. So
Yes.
I appreciate you for having me on.
Thank you. And I'm gonna, again, y'all know I am the posting queen. Okay. So I will be sure to share links to different resources. I'll be sure to share Madison's contact information as well if people have any more questions about any of the bills we touched on tonight. Also, if people are interested in some form of advocacy, she can definitely steer you in the right direction of how to go about doing that
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if it doesn't have to do with anything I talked about tonight, please feel free to reach out. I'm a policy and advocacy nerd, so I'm happy to talk about it in a lot of different topics. So,
Yeah, y'all heard that. She said that. So
yeah.
reach out. Um, so aside, okay, so we had thank you for especially for that Medicaid alert. Did you have anything else, any other announcements or anything you wanted to share before we close out?
I think that's the main one. Just like keep your eyes open, keep checking back because there will always be a lot more announcements
Mhm.
as we go on, especially in this final stretch of the last 6 weeks.
Woo.
It can be a lot happening all at once. So follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page, and then if you're interested, sign up for the email, which is on operationfoodsearch.org. And then occasionally we'll send out advocacy, like a special advocacy alert through that email as well. So we're trying to keep them posted. But as you know, there's always a lot moving. So,
Clearly.
yeah.
Clearly, a lot of different moving parts. So y'all be sure to tap in, so you can stay engaged and involved and aware of the twists and the turns
Mhm.
that take place in our state legislature. So yes,
Mhm.
tap into that. Transform 314. Woo! What don't we have going on? Um, I
Doing.
will say I'm excited. We'll have a special conversation next week. So the homie Vanna will be back on, and we're gonna get into the city of St. Louis's primary elections results. So we're gonna get into that conversation next week. Please tune in, because we got one election down, we got another one to go in the city. So we'll get into some of those results. And
Mhm.
also our following Monday, y'all save the date. We have, drum roll, please, State Senator Brian Williams will be in the House. I we gotta, this is the midway point, so we gotta see what's going on, touch base with our folks, to see what's shaking, what's popping in Jefferson City, just to see what's going on. And also there's always time to, it's never the end all be all with things, right? So he'll be on shedding some light about his work with the gun reform, Lord, at our state level. So that should be interesting. And also, we have Kicking It For Our Cause coming back, y'all. Like, I know people are like, when y'all coming back? When y'all coming back? Yes, we are back in full effect the fourth Thursdays of the month, starting this month. We will be at the Contemporary Art Museum. It's gonna be fun. It'll be again myself, my partner in all things community, Vanna, and also, of course, Alan, Mr. AP, Alan Perkins. So we will be in the building at the Contemporary Art Museum starting, I think our doors open at 6. Please be sure to register. Super excited because again, what are we going to be talking about? You guessed it, April 4th elections. So the city got the elections. I know county people like, Kelly, you don't forgot about us. No, I have not. We will be talking about y'all's elections too, because there's some very interesting elections going on in St. Louis County as well.
Mhm.
So y'all, please stay tuned. Follow us on all the social media platforms. Obviously, you here on YouTube, so YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook to stay tuned of what's going on, the links to register, all of that. So thank y'all for another lovely evening. We had some folks. So shout out to y'all folks that viewed it. Be sure to share this information and also come back because I'm going to include clips and things and ways that people can stay engaged with a lot of the bills and just other things going on, when we're talking about stuff happening at the state level. So y'all be safe out there, and I'll see you next week. Peace.